Your modern spirituality actually traces back to the Middle Paleolithic burial rituals, not divine revelation. Let's talk about it. I'm CJ Everson, and welcome to The Jewish Skeptic. When people talk about spirituality, they usually imagine gods, scriptures, temples, commandments, things that feel ancient and external. But spirituality didn't begin with gods. It began with death, symbols, and questions. All right, let's start with something important. When people talk about spirituality, they usually talk about it like it came from somewhere else, from God, from revelation, from heaven. But spirituality didn't fall out of the sky. It actually grew out of the ground, out of dirt, bones, firelight, and out of dead bodies. So today, we're going to step back tens of thousands of years before Judaism, before Christianity, and even before agriculture, and look at how spirituality actually emerges in the Middle Paleolithic period. I want to walk you through where spirituality actually comes from, starting back in the Middle Paleolithic period, where it actually started, and show you step by step on how that becomes religion, theology, gods, heaven and hell, and even modern today spiritual, but I don't have a religion belief. Human cognition struggling to make sense of existence. But y'all, this is not an attack on meaning. This is about understanding where meaning actually comes from. And by the end of this lecture, you'll see that modern spirituality is not revealed truth, but it's an evolutionary inheritance. So the Middle Paleolithic period roughly spans around 300,000 to 40,000 years ago. This includes the Neanderthals and, most importantly, the early Homo sapiens as we know it. These people were not stupid. They're not animals. They're not brutes. They had brains as large as ours, with complex social relationships, emotional attachment, memory, anticipation, and fear of death. But they had no writing, no science, and no gods. So whatever spirituality emerges here does not come from doctrine. So how does spirituality appear? It appears the only way it could be is actually through behavior. It comes from experience. And the most powerful experience of all, death. One of the most revolutionary moments in human history is when we stop abandoning the dead. At some point, something changes in human behavior. So these Middle Paleolithic humans began burying their dead instead of abandoning bodies, instead of letting the animals consume them. Humans began to bury their dead intentionally. Not everywhere, not always, but enough that we know it was not on accident. Bodies are placed carefully. They're oriented intentionally. And sometimes they're even buried with objects. This tells us something critical, that these humans understood that death was completely different than sleep. They recognized their permanence, and permanence creates existence anxiety. This is revolutionary at this point because burials mean something crucial. It means humans now understand that death is permanent, and permanence creates existence terror, people. And once you understand death, you must ask, where did they go? Are they still something? What has happened to me? Spirituality begins here. Spirituality begins as a response to mortality, not revolution, not with gods, and not with grief. Now let's talk about symbolism. Middle Paleolithic sites showing heavy use of red ochre. Ochre is not food. It is not a weapon. It is not a survival necessity. It's symbolic. Red represents blood, life, injury, birth. Symbolism means something profound has happened to the human mind. This is symbolic thinking, the foundation of spirituality. Humans are now able to separate objects from meaning, represent visible ideas. Think about the present moment. This is spiritual cognition before belief systems even exist. Humans learn to assign meaning. And once you can assign meaning, you can invent spirits. You cannot have religion without symbols, but you can have symbols without religion. One of the biggest misconceptions about religion is this. People think belief comes first and ritual comes second. Anthropology shows the opposite. The Middle Paleolithic humans engaged in repetitive, structured behaviors. Burials done the same way. Bodies placed deliberately. Objects were included intentionally. They use K patterns. Well, rituals come first. Rituals come before belief systems. And people often think that belief causes rituals. Well, rituals create belief. And repetition creates tradition. And tradition creates expectation. And expectation demands explanation. Beliefs are created after the fact to explain ritual. This is exactly how spirituality starts to grow. You practice first, and then you doctrine later. This is how religion actually forms. There's no revelation required. At this stage, humans don't believe in gods. They believe in spirits. They likely practice animism. Animism is the belief that animals have agency. Nature is alive. The dead still exist. Why animism? Because early humans explored the world as alive and dangerous, more than likely. Wind moves without being seen. Fire consumes without mercy. Animals kill. People die suddenly. Animism is not irrational. It is a default human explanation when science doesn't exist. And here's the key point. Animism never disappears. It just changes names. Even today, people say, oh, well, the universe wanted this, or the energy felt off, or the spirit lives on. That's animism, just modernized. So as spirituality develops, some individuals, they gain status. They interpret dreams, they lead rituals, they claim communications with spirits. You know how that is. These are proto shamans. This is where spirituality becomes hierarchical. When someone claims special access to something that's unseen, power enters spirituality. This eventually leads to priests, prophets, divine law, religious authority. But the roots are here in those Paleolithic caves. But it all begins here in the middle Paleolithic period, not with truth, but with interpretation. So at this point, let's connect the dots. We got burials lead to afterlife, spirits lead to gods, rituals lead to law, shamans lead to priests, and stories, well, they lead to scripture. Nothing about religion requires divine origin. Everything about religion requires human psychology. And spirituality today is psychological, if you ask me. We still fear death, seek comfort, tell stories, perform rituals. The difference is now we wrap ancient instincts in modern language. Modern spirituality still carries these same traits: energy, souls, sacred spaces, rituals at death. This isn't a coincidence, it's inheritance. And spirituality didn't descend from the heavens. Spirituality is not evidence of gods. It is evidence of humans learning how to cope with mortality, meaning didn't really come from heaven. It came from firelights, burials, symbols, ritual, graves, memory, fear, loss, and love. And once you understand that, you don't lose meaning. You just reclaim it. You gain clarity because meaning was always ours to create. The middle Paleolithic shows us something uncomfortable. Spirituality is not evidence of gods. It is evidence of human imagination under pressure. And spirituality is not humanity reaching for the divine. It is humanity learning how to live, knowing that we will die. That's it for today, people. Until the next one, I'm CJ Everson, and I'm the Jewish skeptic.
Do you know what I found? The more you know, the less you know.